Hi, and welcome to this section of the Pre-Algebra Tutor. And in this section, we're going to do something just as important as what we covered in the last section. The topic in this section is titled Subtracting Integers. So you know that integers are basically negative and positive numbers, just like we were doing in the last section. No decimal points, they're just the whole numbers, but they're negative, positive, and also zero. So instead of adding them, here we'll be subtracting them. But let me let you in on a little secret. I didn't really tell you this too much last section, but you've already been doing subtraction of integers, really. I mean, there's a couple of new things that we'll need to learn in this section, one case that you've never seen before, but really you've been subtracting integers already. And so let me give you a couple of examples of that, just to kind of give you a little bit of motivation. Remember in the last section when we were adding integers, if I gave you something like 6 plus -3, you know how to do that, right? Because basically, I taught you that anytime you're adding something together, if one of them is positive and one of them is negative, you always have to do a subtraction because one of these guys is negative. So I told you, go ahead and subtract the numbers. It doesn't matter if the order is flipped, you're just still going to subtract the numbers and you're going to get the answer of 3. And the sign of the answer is always going to come from the larger absolute value. So this is positive, so it's positive 3. And I also taught you there toward the end of the section that anytime you have something plus a negative something else, this plus negative business here, it's exactly the same thing as just putting a minus sign in there. And then you already know that 6 minus 3 also gives you 3. So they're both very consistent. Sometimes you might see something written like this, especially when it's not really numbers. When you have variables, letters running around everywhere, then it would be very common for you to see, a plus negative b or something like that, or negative times some other expression that's going to be off over here on the other side, that has letters in there. But when it's numbers, it kind of looks a little silly to put plus minus, because when you think about what you're doing there, I'm adding something to the number 6, but I'm not adding a big number. I'm not adding a positive number. I'm actually adding something that has kind of like a deficit associated with it. In other words, a negative number is when I owe you something else. So I may have had 6 pencils, but I'm adding to that the fact that I owe somebody else something else. So I'm not really adding a number that's making it larger. I'm adding something that I need to end up taking away anyway. And so that's why when you add a negative number, it's the same thing as just subtracting the number. That's sort of the best way I can explain it. And so you need to get in the habit of anytime you see plus negative, it is subtraction. And so I just wanted to kind of show you that because you've already been doing subtraction of integers, really. There's a few cases we need to think about, obviously, that you haven't seen before, but you've been doing it. So take a deep breath. Some people find this difficult, but I'm going to break it down for you so that it's not difficult. All right, so let's look just like we've been doing before. Let's look at a few different cases and break it down just like we've been doing before. So let's say you have a positive number. Subtract from that another positive number, right? So what would be some examples that would fall into this bucket? Well, these would be examples you've seen all your life. Here's a positive number 4 minus 2, which is another positive number. And the answer to that is 2. I mean, these are not rocket science. 3 minus 1 also gives you 2. 6 minus 3, we just did that one, gives you 3. So when you have a positive number and you subtract a positive number, right? In these cases that I have here on the board, these are just regular subtraction problems from first grade. So it's not like you haven't seen this kind of thing before. You just do the normal subtraction as usual. But notice that I didn't really tell you this in the beginning, but I'll point out now that the particular problems I picked here are special because look at these numbers here. All of these numbers here that are first in all these problems, these are, in these cases I put on the board, these are larger. And these guys here that we're subtracting from, or that we're subtracting from the other number, from the larger number, these are smaller. So you already know that if you have a bigger number like 5 and you subtract 2 from it, you can easily do that with marbles or whatever and you can get the answer, larger minus smaller. That's what we learned in first grade. So you've been subtracting integers. However, when you get into algebra, it's perfectly okay to have a smaller number and subtract the bigger number from it, right? Now, when you were in first grade, you were told that that couldn't happen. If I had 5 pencils, I can't subtract from it, 20 pencils. If I have 2 sticks of butter, I cannot subtract from that 6 more sticks of butter. It's impossible because I don't have that many sticks of butter to begin with. Well, that makes total sense for physical sticks of butter. You can't take more away than what you had. But in algebra and the concept of negative number, you can totally do that subtraction, and you'll be doing it every day of the week from here on out in pre-algebra and algebra 1 and algebra 2 and on, forever. Okay, so how do you do that? What does that mean to do that kind of subtraction? Let's explore that. Let's say we're still going to subtract positive minus positive, but let's pick some different problems. Let's pick some problems where things are a little bit reversed. Let's say we had 3 and we're going to subtract from it 4. This is the kind of problem that in basic math, second grade, you would never see it because it doesn't make any sense. Because if you have 3 sticks, I can't subtract 4 sticks from it. However, I'm going to tell you the answer is -1. And I think you'll be able to understand that from this problem. If I only have 3 sticks, let's do it like this. I have 3 markers in my hand, right? And I want to take 4 of them away. Well, in basic math, you would say, well, that's impossible. I only have 3 of them. But in algebra and in higher math, I would say, okay, I want to take 4 of these away. Okay, here's one I'm taking away. Here's the second one I'm taking away. Here's the third one I'm taking away. I have none left, but I need to take 1 more. So then I'll just say, okay, I have -1 markers. Because I tried to take the last one away, but I don't have any. So the only thing I can do is owe you 1 marker, because I don't have any. So I owe you 1. And remember, negative numbers is like owing you something. That's basically what they are. So that is exactly what the concept of negative numbers really are. And this is how they arise. When you try to do a subtraction like this, when you have a smaller number minus a bigger number, you're going to get a negative answer. So if you wanted to show that graphically, which I think is a really good idea, then if you were going to draw a little number line, you would put it like that. And we started at the number 3, so here's 0, here's 1, here's 2, and here's 3. And let's put -1 over here. And then let's say I was going to do this subtraction. So I'm starting at the number 3, so I'm going to put a little dot here. I'm going to put a little arrow to remind you, to tell you that I'm starting here. Right? And I need to take away 4. Now, since I'm subtracting 4, I'm going to go this way on the number line, smaller on the number line. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I land right here on -1. And this is why, because I take these markers away. Eventually, when I get here, I have to take 1 more. That's okay. I'm just going to owe you a marker. So next time I go to the store and buy markers, I'll have 1. I can give it back to you. So you're just keeping track of it, with the sign, basically. So you're doing that. Now, the other thing I want to point out to you that's just as important is that we've actually sort of been doing this already in the last section, in the section on adding integers. Because remember, and I'll just draw a little line here. Remember, what if I gave you the problem 3 plus -4? 3 plus a -4. Well, I told you that the way you would handle this, because you're adding these things together and you have different signs, anytime you're adding something and you have different signs like that, you're going to need to end up subtracting the numbers. So I told you, I said, all right, go ahead and subtract them. 4 minus 3 gives you 1, and the sign is going to come from the larger absolute value. This is the larger absolute value number, so it's -1. So you see, this has already been done before, and I also told you just a minute ago, up here at the top, that anytime you have plus a negative, it's the same thing as just having a negative. Right? So this guy right here, that's one thing you really need to just get used to seeing. If you see plus a negative number, you don't need to really write it like that. I mean, you'll see it in your books a lot because they're trying to teach you the concept of adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing negative and positive numbers. So you'll see this plus negative business a lot. But in real algebra, when you get a little bit farther, you really won't see this very much because this is really the exact same thing as just subtracting. Right? So you see plus negative, you're going to end up subtracting those things together. So everything that we've covered so far, I'm going to give you some more examples. These cases, certainly you've seen them in first grade, so that's already been done. These cases here, when you're still subtracting positive minus positive, but you've got the smaller number, it's the same thing as adding a negative number, which you've already covered in the last section. You know how to do that, right? And I'm trying to give you some graphical tools to show you why it's the case, but we've done it before. You'll find out in a minute when I give you the next case, we've done that one before too. There's really only one case at the end of this section that you've really never seen before. So I could have, if I wanted to, combine this addition and subtraction of integers into one section on this course, but I wanted to split it up to make it totally clear. So I guess what I'm trying to tell you is you've done a lot of this stuff even if you don't realize it. Now let's go and do another one. Let's say I have 1 minus 3. What's that going to equal? Well, I'm going to tell you that it's going to equal -2, and then we'll talk about why. Because here I have 1 marker, right? And I'm trying to subtract from it 3 markers. But I don't have 3 markers, so I only have 1. So I subtract the 1. Okay, now I have to subtract 2 more, but I don't have any more. So I don't have them, but I need to subtract them. So I'm just going to end up owing you those 2 markers. And that's why the answer is -2. And if you wanted to look on a number line, which at this stage of the game, just learning algebra, drawing number lines is a very good idea because you'll always get the right answer. And you'll never get confused. So here's 0, 1, 2, 3, -1, -2. So we'll label -1, -2, 1, 2, 3. So if we did this, we're going to start at +1, and we're going to go backwards 3. 1, 2, 3. I owe you 2 pencils, and that's why we have the -2 there. And then also just to kind of drill it in a little bit more, this is exactly the same thing as what we did in the very last section. It's the same thing as 1 plus a -3. Because we have plus negative, that's equal to 1 minus 3, which I've just shown you as -2. So sort of the, well actually before I get to that, let me just do one more real quick. We'll do one more of these sort of explanation problems, and then I'll summarize something for you. 5 minus 8. Okay, well, I'm going to, if you can visualize a number line even before I draw it, right? Actually, I changed my mind. Let me go ahead and draw it. Let's say we have the number line here, just to kind of show you graphically. We're going to start at the number 5. So here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is number 5 on the number line. All right, and this is -1, -2, -3. -1, -2, -3. And let's say I start on this number line at +5 because that's where I'm starting, and I have to take away 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I land on -3. So the answer is -3. And again, it makes total sense. If I have 5 markers in my hand, but I need to take 8 away, let's do it. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't have any more markers, but I need to keep subtracting. I need to take away 3 more. 6, 7, 8. I owe you 3 more markers. -3. That's why it's negative. The number line is just a nice, convenient way to write that down. And of course, in the same notation as the last section, it's exactly the same thing as 5 plus a -8, right? Because plus and negative is the same thing as subtraction. 5 minus 8, right? Now, this is, I think, an excellent way to do it. You don't want to always draw this number line. You want to do it in the beginning to understand it, but it's a great way to think about it. Let me basically give you a shortcut way to do this. Okay, if you're subtracting bigger from, and then subtracting smaller from it, this is normal subtraction. The answer is always positive. If you're doing a subtraction of positive numbers like this, and you have a smaller number minus a bigger number, then what's going to end up happening is you're always going to subtract the numbers like normal, subtract the bigger number minus the smaller number, no matter which one's first, and you're just going to end up slapping a negative on the front. Notice that 4 minus 3 is 1. It's negative because this guy is the smaller number in the front. 3 minus 1 gives me 2, but it's negative because I started off with a smaller number. 8 minus 5 is 3, so I put a 3, but it's negative because of the fact that I had the smaller number in front. So if you're ever subtracting numbers, and the first one happens to be smaller, then you can just do a regular subtraction and just stick a negative on the front. So however you like to do it. If you like to draw number lines, draw a number line. You'll never get the wrong answer. If you like to convert the problem over into the addition form because you memorized how to do these, that's fine, do that. I promise you though that over time you will get very, very used to this and you won't even think about it. When you see 5 minus 12, you'll know what to do. So let's go on to another case, which again, I told you, you've seen all of these, or a lot of these. So this is going to be something you've seen